If you've been told to pull up your socks, then make sure it's a pair of TNT socks. The TNT shop is now open at tntradio.live. Critically analyzing global affairs. The Muckrakers on today's News Talk, TNT.
Well, welcome along. It's Andrew Eborn here with another edition of The Muckrakers, the show where we strip the day's big talking points down to their bare bones and devour the red meat of pure debate as we focus on the stories that matter to you wherever you're listening or watching around the world. Today, we're going to discuss Julian Assange because he's not appearing nowhere in the media after the appeal last week or so. But political leaders don't seem to mention anything about him. Will they continue to ignore him in this general election campaign? And Sir Keir Starmer, whoever he is, pledges recognition for the Palestinian state in his manifesto. Out he's come, another election point. What do you think of that? And finally, the European Central Bank cuts rates for the first time in 5 years. I'd like to hear all your opinions on all of that, and this is how you can get in touch.
This is the way we're going to be heard.
From the U.S. and Canada, call 1-888-201-6425. From the U.K., call 033-0024-1026. And from Australia and New Zealand, call 1-800-670-310. Free speech is alive and well on today's News Talk, TNT Radio.
And as always, if you've got any thoughts on the topics we're going to talk about today, or even if you want to raise something completely different, do get in touch. It's always a joy to hear from you, and we've had some brilliant callers over the last few weeks. Today, the Muckrakers is made up of me, Andrew Eborn, and also Dr. Roger Gewolb and Juan Passarelli. Now, Dr. Roger Gewolb is a financial entrepreneur, financial services pundit, and lending expert, and founder of the Campaign for Fair Finance. He's also financed and run a number of lenders across Europe and in the USA, and has advised the Bank of England and UK Treasury on asset finance policy. He now works with leading parliamentarians, regulators, academics, trade bodies, and media on an initiative to reform the UK credit and lending industries. Juan Passarelli is an investigative journalist, award-winning filmmaker, and co-founder of Guerrilla Pictures. As a long-time Julian Assange confidant, for years he worked inside the Ecuadorian embassy and has regular access to Assange and WikiLeaks. He's also the writer and director of the brilliant The War on Journalism, the case of Julian Assange, which I watched again this morning, and I would thoroughly recommend that. Now, Julian Assange, he remains detained in Belmarsh Maximum Security Prison in southeast London, where he's been detained since May 2019 after the London police dragged him out of the Ecuadorian embassy. It was only in June of 2012 that he entered the Ecuadorian embassy seeking asylum. Let me come to you first of all, Juan. You know Julian very well. Tell about how that relationship started.
Oh, I got connected to Julian through a mutual friend. I was right out of journalism school, and suddenly was dropped into this massive story in 2010 when they were releasing the third out of the 5 big American documents, military documents that relate to Chelsea Manning, which were documents about the Iraq and Afghan war. It revealed massive war crimes on pretty much every presidency since the war started, and I was asked to film them behind the scenes, and I became friends with them. And then throughout the years, different publications came about. I worked on researching them, making films with Julian. I even constructed a little TV studio for Julian inside the embassy so that he could communicate with the outside world. In the 7 years he was inside that dingy little apartment in central London.
And when did you last see Julian?
Well, I saw him last year in October. I went to the prison. He's still Julian in the sense that he's a brilliant mind, but his health is absolutely deteriorated. He looks extremely aged. You know, we've always had a 10-year, exactly 10 years gap. He's 10 years older than me, and person I saw there was somebody that looked not 53, but 70, this comes from years and years of being in isolation in terrible conditions inside the embassy. Although at the beginning it was a friendly embassy, he didn't have access to sunlight because simply there was nowhere where the sun shined in that first floor apartment in Knightsbridge, and he's been in solitary confinement for 5 years in Britain's top supermax, where the worst type of terrorists and murderers are held. And Julian is an intellectual; he shouldn't even be there, So yeah, I mean that was the last time I saw him. I continue to cover his case. I think that his case is not only important to me because he's my friend, but because he represents the future of our freedom of speech, our ability to speak and to report and to report on what our governments do in our names, which is the basis of our Western democracy. Something that if he goes down, basically the ability of journalists to report on secret documents of the United States and other countries in the West will be gone. We live in a place where we can't communicate what the governments do in our name, good or bad.
No, you're absolutely right. And I spoke about this on the show when they had the appeal, and I predicted what the appeal was going to be, because they've been looking for reassurances from the USA before any extradition proceedings might happen. And the reassurance is obviously that he wouldn't be prejudiced because he's not a non-US citizen, and therefore could rely on Article 1 about freedom of speech. And they had this sort of woolly language saying that he would be entitled to seek to rely. Well, that's no good. You need to have an absolute reassurance that they can do that. So it's predictable that he was going to get that appeal, or the right to appeal. But I'm really concerned about the man, because the report that we have is absolutely he's been suffering mental torture whilst he's been in prison. He's obviously, before being at Belmarsh, he was in the Ecuadorian embassy, I think, for 7 years, and it's been a horrendous toll on him. So, Roger, how long do you think the leaders of the major political parties will be able to ignore Julian Assange, because nobody's speaking up about it?
Well, I think that Julian Assange, and to a certain extent speaking on his behalf, you'll forgive me, Juan, are kind of past their sell-by date. The freedom of speech kind of journalism that Assange started out with was, of course, quite dramatic and revolutionary, but there are a lot of new people, new bodies, new organizations dealing with freedom of speech today, such as our Free Speech Union here with Toby Young, and other people doing things in a less revolutionary and a far more effective way. And I guess I have to say that Julian has himself to blame for a lot of this and shutting himself away. I think also that the characterization of just about absolutely everything as a war crime removes the ability from a perfectly rational government to defend itself. And so I think the whole narrative has gone rather over the top and is out of date. And to answer your question, I don't think he's going to be mentioned very much, because I don't think he's relevant to politics in this country. What people care about here, I'm not sure about the order, but I think they care about the money in their pocket and taxation. They care about immigration and the Islamization of Britain, the protests in the streets, the rise in crime, the horribly inefficient government, and totally useless opposition that we have, and the just dreadful state of political leaders that we've got. And as one of my followers posted the other day, we have coming up in 4 weeks a choice between stepping in dog muck or cat muck. That's what they're concerned about. They're not concerned about freedom of speech per se at this point. And they certainly aren't concerned about Julian as the principal representative of that, because I think that date has long since passed, and he could have come out and not locked himself away and gone in front of a court. And people don't even remember what D-Day is. And I wonder how many youngsters who are going to be ruling the world even remember who he is, frankly.
The biggest problem is this, though, Roger, isn't it? Is that all of the things that you mentioned absolutely of fundamental importance to the electorate and the British people, but without the right to speak about it, which is the fundamental right of freedom of speech, we'd all be in the dark, wouldn't we?
Well, yeah, but nobody's taken that. Nobody's taken that away. I mean, we have the right of freedom of speech is amply demonstrated by the amount of BS and gaslighting we've been listening to for many years. And we're now deluged with it. I mean, the other night I watched the debate between Fishy Rishi Rich and Keir the Fear. And frankly, I turned off the telly and washed my shirt and spent the rest of the evening watching it dry. I mean, freedom of speech is in abundance, particularly at the moment. Nobody's trying to stop it. So I say it's past its sell-by date. It's like screaming about something when people are more concerned about immigration, talking about something else.
Yeah, I mean, I also saw the whole debate.
I agree with George
do come back, Juan, yes.
Yeah, I agree with George that Julian's Julian has political. Hello. Oh, sorry, Roger. Sorry, Roger. The case Julian is political, and the U.S. and U.K. government have been very effective in silencing Julian. But the idea that we have absolute great freedom of speech in the UK when the UK is holding the world's foremost journalist as a political prisoner is absolutely laughable. I mean,
wait. He's not the world's foremost. I'm not. He's not the world's foremost journalist by a long shot.
WikiLeaks has more secrets than every single Western media combined.
That's not what journalism is about. That's not what journalism is about.
Journalism is about holding governments to account. And you say that
journalism is about investigating and reporting on all sides of an issue and allowing your viewers, readership, listeners to make up their mind. That's what
you've
journalism
definitely
is about.
not read any of the WikiLeaks documents because you dare to say that we didn't find war crimes in there. WikiLeaks
I didn't say that.
The Iraq War.
I didn't say. I said
a massacre of 7 people, including a 2-month-old baby, and then the U.S. ordered a bomb strike. That bomb strike was then that cable was shown in the UN, and the Iraqi government decided to not renew the immunity of the troops in the ground, and hence Obama was forced to leave the country. So it was torture in both wars, massive torture.
Yeah,
thousands of people that were not accounted for by the U.S. All of these they changed the way we saw the wars. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous to say that WikiLeaks did not achieve a level of these stories. The Guardian and the New York Times won.
If I could get a word in, yeah, I never said that. I never said WikiLeaks. You're putting words in my mouth, and what you're talking about is irrelevant to what we were just discussing. What I'm saying is that let's just put the cards on the table. If Julian Assange is the world's foremost journalist, then I'm the principal dancer of the Royal Ballet. Okay, I mean, there's just no way. It's not the case. Julian Assange is a leaker. He's a wiki leaker. That's not journalism. That's something different.
That's absolutely ridiculous. I mean,
you're entitled to your opinion.
Exactly. No, I was there. I did the journalism with Julian Assange, and
but we
worked together with the New York Times.
You're not a journalist either. I mean, all I know about
insane.
All I know about
you don't know anything about me.
I'm about to say the only thing I know about you is your Twitter feed, and I mean, it makes Che Guevara look like Mary Poppins. I mean, I've never seen anything so one-sided. That's not investigative journalism.
You've not seen my films. What are you talking about?
No, I haven't.
That's where I do my journalism. It's ridiculous.
Okay.
So,
well, I'm just telling you what's on your Twitter feed.
There's something very important about the free speech of this country right now, of the UK.
Right.
Since the Barreto decision in 2020, any journalist in the United Kingdom can be extradited for receiving, holding, or publishing classified information from the United States. This is a precedent. This is a fact.
So what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? If somebody commits treason, why shouldn't they be held to account?
Well, you can't commit treason if you're not a citizen of that country. And secondly, this is what journalists do every day. They look at classified information, at least national security journalists, and then they report on it. They report on it because that's how we hold governments to account. The press
reporting is one thing, leaking is another.
Well, that's what WikiLeaks did. They published. The leakers were the people within government or other places that gave the material to us. You don't even understand the process of what WikiLeaks was. What are we talking about here?
Yeah, I think just to put this in perspective, Roger, is working on that sort of premise. Julian Assange was a publisher. He didn't steal the information. A lot of what was revealed, and if you look at Juan's brilliant film, I would thoroughly recommend that everybody look at it. Some of the information which was revealed was abhorrent and would not have been revealed had it not been for Julian. Is that a fair summary, Juan?
Absolutely.
And give us just so we know, to put it in perspective. Give us some of the highlights. Give us some of the highlights of what was revealed, because we see some of the atrocities, what effectively amounted to murder. Give us just a little headline about 3 or 4 of those things that was revealed.
Sure. Task Force 373 was a killer capture death squad in Afghanistan. You know, we revealed how the U.S. droned a wedding party on false information. We revealed how 95% of the people in Guantanamo Bay are not terrorists and not even linked to Al Qaeda. We revealed the massive amounts of torture and
excuse me. You made the claim that 95% of the people in Gitmo were not terrorists. I've heard that one before. Did you present any proof?
Absolutely. We revealed the documents of all the documents that the United States prepared of every single prisoner in Guantanamo Bay. And what
those documents, Juan, said
they're online.
This bloke is not a terrorist. Those documents said this bloke is not a terrorist.
Yes.
But we're just going to keep him here.
Exactly.
Because I've never seen that.
Well, probably you need to do some research on Guantanamo then. I mean,
but I've never seen a document. I've never seen an official U.S. government. I've never seen an official U.S. government document that says Mr. A is not a terrorist, but we're going to keep him here in Gitmo.
Well, go to WikiLeaks.org and go to the Gitmo files and read the prisoners' manuscripts. You can also follow some of the amazing journalists in the UK that did the work on Guantanamo. Andrew, I'll be happy to email you a couple of articles on that.
Sure,
but
I'd like that.
In the UK, we have the world's foremost Guantanamo Bay researcher, and he worked on those documents. I mean, we revealed how Hillary Clinton was ordering her UN people to steal the DNA of Ban Ki-moon. We revealed how the Clinton Foundation was receiving money for Clinton campaign from Saudi Arabia. I mean, this is it revealed the entire cyber arsenal of the CIA and how they're using it.
So look, just to put things in perspective, as Andrew said, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, a lot of useful stuff was revealed. I think some of it was over the top, some of it was unproved. But the point is, Julian is a tragic figure.
You can't mention
Julian is a tragic thing. Julian is a tragic figure, and I mean, what we're really talking about here is where does it all go from here? And I was going to say, in response to Andrew's question, I think that Trump will pardon him. And I think Biden is minded to let everything drop. But my personal view is it's not going to happen in July, as a lot of people are saying, because, Sleepy Joe just doesn't want all that noise going on around his presidential campaign. So it's going to happen, I think, in November after the election.
Well, which is
So
interesting. I mean,
that's the Assange story
if there is
today.
going to be a pardon, there will be it would be after November. I mean, that's how
it
presidential
would
pardons
undoubtedly
work.
be. But and again, it goes back to the woolly language. I mean, Donald Trump has, in the last few days, he said he would give very serious consideration to pardoning WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange if he wins the U.S. election. Well, very serious consideration.
That's pretty strong language for America, and that's pretty good.
Yeah.
No,
Is that reassuring, do you think, Juan?
Happened,
Is that reassuring?
Donald Trump was the person who indicted, or his administration was responsible for indicting Julian at an unprecedented level. That no other journalist in the history of the United States has been charged under the Espionage Act. Then, in the final weeks of Donald Trump's presidency in 2020, he did try to pardon him. In fact, I had a source inside the Oval Office who was feeding me the lists of the pardons, and Julian Assange was at the top of the list. And now the Senate Intelligence Committee called Donald Trump and said, look, if you pardon Julian Assange, we will not stay behind you during your impeachment proceedings, which are coming up regarding the January 6th situation. So, I mean, the intelligence community in the military-industrial complex are the most interested parties of keeping Julian silenced and keeping him in prison without a due process. So, I mean, Donald Trump, he's somebody that will do a pardon or will not, depending on how the wind blows. You know.
Yeah.
No, I think
hold that thought just for one moment, because time is against us. We're going to take a quick break, but I do want to continue this conversation about Julian Assange. We're going to be back after these messages.
Affordable housing, we can build that. Sustainable housing, we can build that. At MIT Modular, we understand the importance of housing for all and the importance of design, cost, and functionality. Our goal is to meet the needs of our growing population by converting shipping containers to livable units. If you're like-minded and in a position to invest in something meaningful and life-changing, we want to hear from you. We are a team of professional architects, engineers, and financial and tax experts dedicated to offering unique solutions that provide a brighter future. Our Opportunity Zone Fund offers investors both real estate and operating business diversification, 5-year tax deferral on capital gains, annual tax benefits, and ultimately tax-free appreciation potential. There are opportunity zones all over America. If you're interested in learning more about our services, need affordable housing, or want to participate in creating a new vision for tomorrow, give us a call in the U.S. on 385-985-5702. Or read more at mitmodular.com. MIT Modular. We can build that.
Critically analyzing global affairs. The Muckrakers on today's News Talk, TNT.
Well, welcome back to the Muckrakers with me, Andrew Eborn, my brilliant guests, Dr. Roger Gewolb and Juan Passarelli. And we've been talking about Julian Assange, and Juan was pointing out he's one of the foremost journalists, has revealed all these secrets which had basically benefited humankind. Roger disagrees. Is there anything, Roger, of value in what Julian Assange has done, do you think?
Oh, yes. I mean, I think what he did all those years ago in the beginning was revolutionary, was why he is the only journalist who was so punished, as Juan said, because nobody else did it. I think it did have value. It was a big step for free speech, but it's gone on and kind of lost its flavor. And to come back to the main point of this discussion, which you began with, no, I don't think Julian Assange will enter into the United Kingdom general election one jot, one iota. It's just totally irrelevant to the things that really concern people. And I think that people, Julian Assange's side, are not even per se so worried about their free speech today as how worried they are about how all these crazy people that we have to vote for, who keep talking nonsense and hot air and gaslighting about one thing after another. Starmer's cheap move, I'm going to recognize Palestine, like the Palestinians care whether the United Kingdom Labour Party recognizes them. I mean, it just goes on and on. Rishi's photo ops with all the silly things they say. Bates Motel Hunt telling us he's made tax cuts when actually things like the Institute of Fiscal Affairs say, no, the tax has actually gone up. I mean, everybody's just sick of it. That's why the London mayoral election turnout was so low. Media, journalists, TV and radio newscasters, they all say one thing, but if you're out on the streets talking to people, as I am constantly, it's a different set of fish, Andrew. They don't care. They just want it over with. They're sick of all of them.
Yeah, I think what we like to do on the Muckrakers is obviously more light and less heat. I mean, Julian is a symbol of an assault on the American state. Most of the rest of the world would see it as legitimate journalism, pointing out that he is a publisher. Does it concern you how he has been treated, where there are reports of torture, there are reports of him being denied access to his lawyers, there are reports of him being surveyed, there are reports of him being surveyed whilst he was in the embassy? Does that concern you?
Totally. If those reports are true, it's absolutely abhorrent and terrible. I mean, I have no way of knowing, but there's been quite a few of those reports, so there may well be some truth to it. I just don't know. We're not told. But that's
is there any truth, Juan? I've seen your film, Juan, where you make those various accusations. To Roger's point, is it true?
That's absolutely true. I mean, I've been researching and covering for my next film. Specifically the CIA operation against WikiLeaks, and it starts with the publication of Vault 7, which was the cyber arsenal of the CIA and how they were using it, which included stuff like, apart from being able to turn on your TV and your microphone and camera on the TV, etc. It also had things like they can hack into cars and press the brake or accelerator at any point in time and, create assassinations that are completely untraceable and just make it look like an accident. The CIA was really embarrassed. And that was just the beginning of the Trump presidency. Mike Pompeo was made director of the CIA, and he used his first speech to dedicate to WikiLeaks. The CIA director dedicates his entire speech on what he sees the biggest threat to the United States, a publishing organization that has, a few dozen people working for it. He labeled WikiLeaks a non-state hostile intelligence agency. And that was very peculiar. At the time, we just thought it was a bit over the top. But what turns out is that the CIA, when they're directing operations against another spy organization, they don't have to report it to the Congress. So they don't have any oversight. So in that way, they were able to direct espionage operations inside the embassy through co-opting the private security company in the embassy. And they installed all sorts of microphones and cameras to spy, especially on Julian's medical and legal conversations. In the Nixon era, when Ellsberg released the Pentagon Papers, the entire case was overturned just because Nixon sent a couple of quote unquote plumbers to look at his psychiatrist office and try and dig some dirt against Daniel Ellsberg. Julian was spied on, and not only Julian, every one of us was spied on for years inside the embassy. Information collected about us to extreme levels, and then we know that through an amazing report where 30 secret people from the CIA, ex-CIA, and other intelligence agencies revealed that there was a plan to assassinate Julian and other WikiLeaks members in 2017, and there was plans for a shootout outside Harrods if Julian were to get into a diplomatic car, and even a plan with MI5 to shoot the tires out of a plane if he was able to get in on a plane. So, this type of stuff that you hear about in Afghanistan, where they do target assassinations with drones, or that Russia does in London from time to time, the CIA does it too. And there were severe plans on assassination or kidnapping him from the embassy.
Yeah, and again, that comes out in the report, the excellent film that you did. And there's also concern about the Eastern District of Virginia, but it's called the Espionage Court, and the jurors on that will be made up of various people from the relevant US organizations. So there's the suggestion that he wouldn't get a fair trial. I do want to cover lots of other points. It's such an important point about Julian Assange, which we do need to look at. We do need to make sure that, I say, we shine more light in their seat. He's facing 175 years in prison. I do hope that Trump or Biden make it clear that they would pardon him and we can move on. But basically, just to finish what Julian says, if wars can be started by lies, then it can be stopped by truth. And I do think we need to look at that sort of side. I want to move on to another subject. Before I do that, though, I'm very keen to hear from our brilliant audience. This is how you can get in touch.
Our lines are open. From the U.S. and Canada, call 1-888-201-6425. From the U.K., call 033-0024-1026. And from Australia and New Zealand, call 1-800-670-310. Free speech is alive and well on today's News Talk, TNT Radio.
There you go. So do get in touch. We're really welcoming your views. It's great to have Juan with me and also Roger as well. Now, Sir Keir Starmer, he's planning to use the Labour manifesto to make his strongest commitment on Palestine statehood since the war in Gaza started. The final version of the manifesto will be agreed in a meeting with unions on Friday and launched officially next Thursday. Now, according to people familiar with the draft, it will say a Palestinian state should be recognised as part of a peace process and not vetoed by other states in the region. Do you think peace can be achieved by the recognition of a Palestinian state, Roger?
No, I don't think that would achieve anything. The only way peace could be achieved is if Hamas, first of all, is eliminated so that the threat of wiping out a democratic country is gone, and then the Palestinians, have a new, better government that can negotiate with the Israelis and all the other international nations that want to help. But simply making a declaration by a UK political party, which itself isn't really these days a political party, it's an agglomeration of warring factions at the moment, trying to keep the lid on all the blood and the noise going on. It's a bit of a joke. And I don't think really anyone much cares. And poor old Keir, the fear, he like Rishi, they're both just so flagrantly obvious. They'll grab at anything floating by in the air to try to hang on and get some votes. I think that Keir and all of them are really rattled by Farage changing his mind and coming back. And you will see further signs of desperate, rather silly moves that aren't going to really have anything to do with UK voters. Whatever they feel will boost their popularity.
Yeah, we're all desperate for a solution. War, not jaw. What do you think the solution should be, Juan?
Well, I think that Keir Starmer is doing too little, too late. He's trying to grab the voters that are outraged by the genocide in Israel. I think that if we want to start to see some sort of peace, the first thing is stop military cooperation with the country and start putting some real pressure internationally, and using the international bodies we have to coerce them to stop the genocide, like they did in South Africa. The United Kingdom and the US, they in history, they're always on the wrong side, right? They were the ones promoting the apartheid back in the day. They're the ones who started this absolute mess in 1945 or 44, whenever it was that Israel was created, and they created a colonizing country that has been massacring the indigenous population ever since.
Yeah. I mean, it is extraordinary just trying to find this sort of solution, and the whole thing of it when it's being politicized is obviously a bit of a nightmare. Now, we've got the front page of the Times today where they're saying 20 people from the Green Party are basically calling out this particular war, and they're saying that some of it's actually a false flag, and being labelled with the anti-Semitism, which I'm never a fan of labels. Do you think that label is just being bandied around to shut down debate, Roger?
I don't think there's going to be any solution with that kind of talk. First of all, I think people have to be very careful about calling it genocide. I mean, there's two arguments there. If Mexico invaded Texas, the next day, Mexico would be a highly irradiated parking lot. I mean, any country would flatten anybody that did that to them. But where the Jews are concerned, where Israel's concerned, it always doesn't work in their favor. It's always been that way, always has been, always will be. That's just how it is. But I mean, Israel certainly has a right to defend itself, and Hamas putting human targets as shields and then saying, "Oh, look, you've killed them." It's a very complicated situation. It's not that easily resolved. So I think the first step is that all of that sort of he said, she said stuff needs to be moved aside. And the Palestinians need to be given a government that can actually govern them democratically and fairly. And then you could conceivably have equals talking. But I think the thing with the Greens, well, I mean, they're the Greens. They're just so fringe at times on all kinds of issues that you can't really take them too seriously. I think this election, which is what we're really talking about, is the Tories versus Labour. I don't think that Labour is the shoe-in that everybody was saying a week ago. I think that the people out on the street whom I speak to are so scared of Labour and what they might do, many of them, other than Labour supporters, that Rishi, he might actually squeak in. And then there's Farage, who surprisingly is closing the gap with the Tories in terms of percentages every day. And I don't know what you guys think, but I mean, is there a chance, even with the first past the post, that Reform could become the number one party? So I think those are the major issues today, and recognizing another country or really doing anything. Oh, sorry. And then there's the other big debate about Ukraine. Well, my personal view is that had we provided the money and the arms to Ukraine a year ago, it might have made a difference. But, everybody that I know who's inside the situation says it's too late. Ukraine is just not going to win this war. We're throwing good money after bad. They've got to sit down and negotiate. But all of these issues, Middle East, Ukraine, the rest, are absolutely not affecting what's happening here in Britain. Remember what Bill Clinton said? I think you referred to it, Juan. Years ago, he said, "It's the economy, stupid." That's what people think about when they're in the voting booth.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And we're going to be looking at the economy straight after the break. I just want to raise one final point on this. I mean, Israel bombed a UN school which was sheltering thousands of displaced Palestinians in central Gaza in the early hours of Thursday morning. The reports are that it killed at least 33 people, including 12 women and children, according to hospital records and eyewitnesses. Won't this strengthen the case for genocide and backfire on Israel in the eyes of the world?
No, because I don't believe anything I hear from the Hamas Health Authority, for goodness sake. I mean, who knows what's going on there? We're not on the ground. All I know is that we have some very biased reporting both ways. I don't know what you can trust what who says, but I do know that enough people are watching what's going on that, they're not going to let anybody go in there and just randomly murder people. That's ridiculous.
Final word to you on this one, Juan.
Well, I'm glad that Roger mentioned Mexico, because I was born in the 80s in Guatemala, amidst a genocide being sponsored by Israel and by the United States at that time. The idea that I love that for some reason Israel is not beholding to our normal capitalistic values. The right to property. Apparently, we don't hold Israel to the same standards. Somehow, if you have private property in Palestine,
you don't.
I'm trying to make points. If you let me.
Who is we, and how does we not hold anybody to normal standards of property law? You make some outrageous claims.
No, I'm talking about the invasion of land, of Palestinian land, for decades and decades. And if a country has invaded another country, it's been Israel invading the indigenous population.
I'm sorry, the Palestinians were all Jordanians
and the Palestinians
and the Israelis were there before them.
Defend themselves.
The
Palestinians also have a right to defend themselves.
The synagogue in Gaza was built.
In war, there are also rules. And in
the
rules,
synagogue in Gaza was built in 508,
civilians.
100 years before Islam began. I mean, there's arguments all over the place. You can take which ones you want. I'm not particularly saying you're wrong, you're right. But what I'm saying is, let me just tell you a story.
What I'm saying is that there is a genocide going on because.
Can I tell you a story? Can I just tell you a story before we run out of time?
No, let me finish.
Many years ago,
there's proportionality.
Okay.
40,000 civilians in 8 months. 70.
Which is apparently, according to Colonel Richard,
we don't know what's going on.
Former commander of British forces in Afghanistan, the lowest civilian count in any war in history. So, if I can just tell you a story, you make it so simple and so black and white and so one-sided. It's an incredibly complex thing. 75 years. How can you be refugees? What about the Arab countries, their brethren? Cameron wants us to bring 200,000 of these people who hate the UK because of what we've done in supporting. He wants to bring them here, but Egypt won't take one of them. So, it's very complex. Let me just tell you a quick story. Many years ago,
it's not complex.
There was a seminar.
That's murder. That's a war crime.
If I can finish,
40,000 people.
There was a seminar in Whitehall, and the top Israeli and the top Arab and Palestinian representatives, all the big shots came here, and I was invited to it. And I remember Mr. Manuel Sasassian, who was the Palestinian ambassador to the UK, I can't remember, a really nice guy. He gave the opening keynote speech, and he told this story as he began. He said, a Jew and an Arab died and went to heaven, and they went before God, and God said, everybody who comes up here gets to ask one question. But since you two have been at each other's throats for so long and you're so bound together, I want you to ask me a joint question. And Sasassian said, so they went away to think, and the Arab and the Jew came back, and the Arab said to God, he said, God, sir, or madam, he said, here's our question. Will there ever be peace between us? And God thought and said, not in my lifetime. It's a very complicated situation.
Really silly joke to a very serious subject. 40,000 people.
You tell that to the Palestinian ambassador. You tell that to the Palestinian ambassador and all the bigwigs who were there. They'll appreciate that.
Okay, gentlemen, it is such an important topic, and as we always say, we will come back to this. Unfortunately, time is against us. We're going to take a quick break, but we're going to be back after these messages.
We come from a long line of farmers, and there's a sense of pride with being part of these multi-generational businesses, but there's also a significant amount of pressure. My senior year of high school, my dad made the decision that this world no longer needed him in it. I don't know if he was overwhelmed by the bills and checks that weren't going to be coming in because of the strawberries dying off, but it breaks my heart that my dad made a permanent decision for a temporary issue. Don't feel like you have to go through it alone.
Farmers have to take care of their physical and their mental health, because what's a farm without a farmer?
In the mornings, that's my time. Watching the sun come up, I can have a cup of coffee and exercise if I want to. It helps me start the day with a sense of gratitude.
Yay!
Every day is a new opportunity. Don't forget to check in on yourself. Love, your mind.
Hi, I'm Susan Lucci. I never thought about heart disease until I had my own heart event. I had a 90% blockage in my main artery and a 75% blockage in the adjacent artery. I received 2 stents in my arteries. Stents developed through research funded by the American Heart Association. Those stents saved my life. Learn more about the American Heart Association's life-saving work at helpheart.org.
From national security to global corruption, this is the Muckrakers on today's News Talk, TNT.
And this is indeed the Muckrakers with me, Andrew Eborn, and my wonderful guest, Dr. Roger Gewolb and Juan Passarelli. We've been covering everything from Assange to Palestine and Gaza and the solutions. The gentlemen do not agree. We're trying to find some common ground. We're going to see if they can actually argue about this one. The European Central Bank cuts rates for the first time in 5 years. Roger, let me start with you. What difference will this rate cut make to the lives of most Europeans?
Somebody tweeted the other day and said that they had been viewing Dr. Rogers' 6 points to save the British economy, and they would respectfully like to add a 7th, which is, why isn't Roger on all the UK news channels at the same time? I've actually been flicking tonight, and I think he actually is. So that was very gratifying. And a lot of the time that I'm on all those channels, I have been saying that the Bank of England is the most incompetent guardian of monetary policy that we have ever had since the days of Robin Hood. Andrew Bailey, the Bailey-osaurus, and his other thick-skinned colleagues who won't listen to anybody, raised interest rates 14 times in the face of non-consumer demand inflation. In other words, raising interest rates and making money more expensive for people when food and energy are going up, things over which they have no control, does nothing other than inflate and prolong the inflation. Andrew Bailey, as in his previous job at the Financial Conduct Authority, is responsible, in my view, for some multi-billion-pound disasters wrecking British industry, tens and tens of millions of British households that will never recover. I could go on for a long time. I have been banging on about this in the news, in the press, on television, on radio for over a year and a half since the first rate cut. Do not raise interest rates, idiots, but they still do it. Now, I've been banging on the last couple of months because non-consumer cost push, as they call it, inflation falls by itself. And even though you've inflated and prolonged it, you stubborn man, it has fallen almost near your 2% target. For God's sake, start to cut interest rates. And he and the idiotic Hunt and Sunak behind him say, we're combating inflation. It's got nothing to really do with inflation. He still hasn't lowered interest rates. Hopefully, the European Central Bank starting to lower interest rates will give him the peg, because the man has no imagination of his own. My friend Alex Brummer, the long-standing city editor of the Mail, said in an exclusive interview with me that Andrew Bailey doesn't have the intellectual capacity and wherewithal for the job, maybe because he's always hanging his hat on whatever the Federal Reserve in the States does. Maybe now that the ECB has lowered these rates, the jerk will finally start to lower our interest rates.
Well, Roger, your views are very clear. I think you've had a fair crack of the whip, as my good friend Steve would tell me. Juan, what are your views? I'm very keen. I mean, the ECB rate, is it going to have a significant implication for the UK economy, do you think?
Not sure how it would affect. Actually, this is not my subject to begin with. I mean, the Europe cutting rates will increase the amount of money supply, will stimulate the economy in certain sectors. I mean, That's great. The issue I see is that whatever happens, we're still printing more money. We're devaluing the money that our people have, that the population has, and that's something that happens every single year. Money is worth less and less and less every year, and it's a broken system to begin with.
For someone who says he doesn't know the subject, you put your finger right on the major matter.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert.
Well,
I'm a Bitcoiner, mate. I mean, I'm a bit of a libertarian when it comes to financial matters, but I do find the fact that we work for our euros, for our dollars, and we exchange our life, our time in this earth for those dollars, and then every single year we keep on having. We save 1 year, that's is worth less than the year before. So, I mean, I think that if we need to think about a new solution. I don't know what that solution would be. I put my money on Bitcoin.
Well, yeah, a very interesting one. I mean, you are, however, an investigative journalism, and as we always say, there's no wrong question. And what I always believe in any area is get rid of the jargon, and that's what Roger does so brilliantly. I've shared a studio with him many times, which is fun. But answer me this: I mean, either of you. But if monetary policy is being so mismanaged, why hasn't the Bank of England faced more public scrutiny for its decisions and the institutional workings behind them? Do you have a view on that? Yeah.
What a marvelous question. I mean, it's unbelievable, Andrew. First of all, nobody said anything. The media, the MSM, the mainstream media, just kept mouthing whatever Bailey said. Sunak and Hunt did the same. It was sheer idiocy what they were saying. We're combating inflation. No, you're not. You're pouring oil on a Californian forest fire. Nobody challenged it. Okay. Step 2, along comes the House of Lords Economic Affairs Committee. They said, Mr. Bailey, Bank of England, your methods are outdated. Your software is defective. You have a groupthink attitude where no one is allowed to have a diverse opinion. You think diversity means having women and people of color, and yet all of you keep raising interest rates except for one member of the Monetary Policy Committee. The way you're operating is appalling. You have handled inflation miserably. We think the independence that Gordon Brown gave you in 1997 should be taken away. Okay? Nothing happened. House of Lords, nothing happened. Third and final step, Andrew. Bailey appointed Ben Bernanke, the former head of the Federal Reserve in America, his mate, to come and check, if you can believe, on their financial modeling. He didn't call on Andy Haldane, the chief economist of the Bank of England for 30 years, who's right here, because Haldane doesn't believe interest rates should have been raised. He called his friend Bernanke, and everybody shouted, foul, foul, nepotism, this is terrible. However, when Bernanke finished his report, he said, this place is a mess. Your forecasting is pathetic. Your software doesn't work. Your modeling is outdated. You suffer from groupthink. You're pretty much useless and you shouldn't have your independence. And even then, when his buddy turned on him and shopped him, still nothing has happened. This government has done nothing. And here is the most tragic thing. Rachel Reeves, whom I call citation required because of her book, Rachel Reeves and Starmer and Angela Rayner haven't even said a word. You'd think they would say, we're going to bring interest rates down. We're going to do something about the Bank of England. We're going to act on this. None of them, nobody. That's why our politicians are so totally, abysmally useless.
There you go. Well, Roger's view is very clear. It sounds as though neither party would solve that. I think he's equally critical of Labour as he is of the current Conservatives. Juan, I'm going to give you the last word, even though it's not your area of expertise. It's been a merry ding-dong throughout. Which party do you think is going to be best for the economy in the UK, based on your opinion?
I mean, both parties are exactly the same. I mean, you're as Julian once put it, you're asking me to choose between gonorrhea and cholera. You know, it's Starmer is so much of a Tory, and Sunak is so much of a New Labour Starmerite. You know, it's exactly the same. For the economy, they're going to continue privatizing the NHS. They're going to continue increasing militarization around the world. I mean, yeah, and they're going to continue to answer to their real constituencies, who are the people who donate the money for their elections. Not
very clear point. I love the comparison between gonorrhea and cholera. That's your choice. Two cheeks to the same backside. Time is against us, though, gentlemen. Thank you very much for Dr. Roger Gewolb and Juan Passarelli. A fascinating discussion. I'll be back with you same time next week. Take care. Bye bye.